Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. I need you guys to smash that like button. Today we continue the Melody series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com/melody. If you don't know me, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We train over 1 million producers around the world. Some have gone to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, Polo G, Trippie Redd, J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Glorilla. We have 3 confirmed Grammy winners and multi-platinum plaque winning producers. In this video, I'm going to give you guys the melody formulas to always create dope melodies. All right, it's very simple. So the first step is understanding simple chords. Now, chords build up melody. As much as people want to avoid chords, chords are melody. It's called harmony specifically. So what we're going to do is map this out. The most modern melodies start at C sharp. I've noticed C sharp minor. So we're going to create a minor chord. What builds a chord, however? Okay, we're not talking about scale degrees, but what builds a scale? It's integer. Okay, so my system derived from integer notation, and I created a system called chord codes at BusyWorksBeats.com. So for example, if we start here at C sharp, I can count up and create a minor chord no matter where I am on the keyboard. So the minor chord is 0, 3, 7, meaning C sharp is the point of rest, no relative distance, and then we're going to count up our keyboard note by note until we finish out the chord code. So this is 0, and we're going to count up the keyboard 1, 2, 3. We're going to play those notes. That's called the minor third. And then we're going to finish the chord code 4, 5, 6, 7. Play all these notes together, you get a minor chord. So that's how I teach people chords in less than a minute. You don't need to memorize scales. You don't need to go to music theory college. You don't need a special tutor. As long as you can count, you can create chords. Now here's how we turn chords into melody. So instead of playing chords like this all at once, we're going to spread them out in time. So just like a guitar, we're going to pick the notes. That's what creates melody, is spreading out chords over time. So now that you guys understand where chords come from, it comes from numbers under the hood. I'm going to show you guys how to apply it. Here's a free plugin called Ample Guitar M Lite. It is free. You have to get it from Plugin Boutique. If you get it from Ample Sound's website, it's very complicated and it's confusing. So just get it from Plugin Boutique. It's completely free. Now here's the melody we created. All right, so I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to create that complex of a movement. It's very simple once you understand chord codes. So let's go to a blank pattern here. We're going to right click, go to piano roll. I assume you guys don't have MIDI controllers, so I'm going to show you guys how to draw this in. We're going to change our snap to grid to 1/2 beat, and we're going to start right back at C sharp. So the first thing is to map out your chord. Okay, so we're going to start here C sharp. Okay, and then we're going to use the chord codes. This is 0. Okay, and then we're going to count up the keyboard to finish out the chord code, counting note by note. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. So 0, 3, 7 gives us the minor triad in this case. Now we have to give it timing so that it doesn't feel like we're playing a chord. So there's many ways we can go about creating timing. Now to level you guys up very fast, let's talk about chord voicing. So I can play a chord this way. I can play it this way, or I could even play it like this. So we're playing the same chord, we're just moving where those notes are. So let's first start off with the normal voicing, and we're going to start here at the perfect fifth and then work back down to the tonic. The perfect fifth usually wants to resolve on the tonic, so that's why it feels more natural. Now in the melodies that we normally create, in terms of top line, it likes to be in what's called the rule of threes, or the rule of thirds. So we're going to make the notes in threes. So what we can do to this chord is simply slice it and just repeat the same pattern. So let's slice it. Okay, and then we can have it repeat in the same pattern. Just hit Control, hit Shift to drag this over, and just hit Shift. Now on the last time, we're just going to stretch it all the way out. Now for an acoustic guitar, the reason it sounds fake, one is because it has unnatural reverb. So let's go into the plugin and turn that off. Any delays or any reverbs are not natural for a guitar in terms of like spatial effects. Nextly, what we're going to do is elongate these notes, because in an acoustic guitar specifically, when you play a note, it rings out in the body of the guitar. It doesn't just stop. So let's hit Alt L and then make sure only with selection is turned on. That will make sure it fills in the gap for that specific note in FL Studio. So this will make it sound more natural. So now we're going to go based on what our ear wants to hear. Okay, so we're really listening to the top note. Now my ear wants to hear duh. Okay, so now we're gonna hit shift and drag the entire chord down. And if it sounds quote unquote wrong, we're gonna turn it to a different chord type called the major chord, which is 0-4-7 instead of 0-3-7. So this feels quote unquote wrong. So let's switch the chord type. Okay, we're gonna take this minor third and we're gonna pull it up one, hitting shift up. So it's 0-4-7. That creates the major chord. So there's two main chords we're gonna switch between, is minor and major. And that feels more natural. Now let me show you guys how to fill out the sound. We're gonna take the root note here, the root notes I should say, and hit shift left click to duplicate them and hit control down. And then we're gonna pull them to the left so they start when we start picking the notes. Now again, we need to make sure the notes at the very end elongate all the way to the tail end. So let's hit Alt. Let's highlight all these notes actually, hit Alt L, and then make sure it says only with selection. Now another way to fill out the sound is to add what's called a perfect fifth. So a perfect fifth is either 7 notes up from the root note. So if I'm at C sharp and I count up 7 notes one by one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that gives you G sharp. It's called your perfect fifth. It always harmonizes with the tonic note or the root note. Okay, so what we can do is add this in the bass along with our root note. Okay, so we're gonna copy the root notes, hit shift, duplicate them, and then pull this note down 5. Okay, so a perfect fifth is either down 5 notes or up 7 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you're confused where to go next with your chords, listen to the top note. Your ear will tell you where it wants to go. So da, 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 bomb. Okay, so let's try that. And let's copy this over. And again, we're not worried about is it the right chord or not. We're gonna just make sure we land on C sharp. This is the top note. We can always go in and change the chord type. Now it feels wrong as a major chord, even though there's no wrong or right triad. So we're just gonna pull that down a half step to a minor chord. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 3, 7. All we're doing is just changing this middle note here. Now my ear wants to hear da, da. Okay, that's what my ear wants to hear. So da, da, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, da, da, da. So I want to go dun, 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 something like that. Now here we have to remove some notes because everything shouldn't trigger. Okay, and then we want it to go dun. So my ear wants to hear a different top note, which is D sharp. Now here because I moved notes out of the way, we now have to re-trigger the sequence. So the notes are out of order basically. So I'm just using my ear to readjust these. Okay, and then I pulled this middle note, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I pulled it up to a major triad. So right now it's going dun 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 dun, and it needs to be dun 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 dun. So we need to just make sure that pattern exists. So it's gonna pull these notes. So this is a little tedious, but all I'm doing, guys, is just making sure it goes 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then 1, 2, 3. I just have these offset. Now it feels like it's moving around, the melody's moving around, and that's because it's a harmony underneath. Now it still feels like it's fake because everything has what's called the same velocity. So if you don't see this in FL Studio, pull the ellipses up at the bottom here. We're gonna go to where it says control, go to note velocity, and then we're gonna go up to the top, go to tools, and then we're gonna humanize, and we're gonna change the velocity field so that it has a variation in the velocity. Because in real life, you don't play notes the same way. Again, it's like me talking like this every single time and I'm talking at the same velocity. It's just, you talk like a robot if you talk like that. So we're gonna fix the notes to have more human dynamic. Now you can try different chords. You don't always have to use a major or a minor chord. This is a little complex, so I'm not trying to introduce too many complex things here, but you guys can also try diminished chords. So for example, we have here G sharp, C, and then D sharp. So a diminished chord is 0, 3, 6. So I can pull all the bottom notes just up a half step. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's see what that sounds like. It may or may not sound good for this. Yeah, it just doesn't fit, so never mind. Okay, so another way we can voice these chords is doing what's called a raised, a first inversion. We can do that by raising the tonic. So in short, the way we built the chords was 0, 3, 7. Okay, so what if we take that root note, the 0 in this case, okay, and then pull that up an octave, hit Control up. Now we can keep it in the same timing. Now it sounds more like uplifting. So let me show you guys something. So this sounds good. So what we're going to do is duplicate this entire section here. Hit Control to highlight, hit Shift, left click, and drag everything over. So we're going to use the same exact harmony, the same exact chords. We're going to take all the root notes, and I'm just showing you guys how to make your compositions feel more full. Now we're going to take all the root notes and hit Control up. All we did is just move the octave. Now we can repeat this entire thing. Drag it over, hit Control to highlight, hit Shift to duplicate, and left click and drag. Now on the third, or the on the fourth way around, what I'm going to do is pull the root notes back down and then raise what's called the third. So the third is that middle note. Remember, this is the only notes we're focusing on are these 3 notes here. Okay, so we're going to take the middle note, we're going to highlight these middle notes, and we're going to pull them up. Now the timing might be weird, so I might have to adjust the timing. So let's just pull those up an octave. It's a little weird timing, so let's drag. This is a little convoluted because we have to drag everything. So we're going to drag the thirds to the beginning of the beat, and then we're going to drag everything else to the right so that it's offset. And I think I copied all the notes, if I'm not mistaken. All right, so let's drag these over just one. So here's where it gets weird because the timing is off. So my ear wants to hear the root note raised up for some reason, and then drag everything else over. So it is a little convoluted. I'm not going to act like this is the easiest thing to draw in because now everything's out of position and we have to remember where it was in time. So it is difficult here. So again, the hardest part here is just getting the time right. So dun dun dun. Okay, now we need to make sure that lines up. I think what might make more sense is if we just line this up. There we go. For some reason, raised thirds is just messing with my brain, guys, but that is the last technique, is to raise that third. Because we have so many notes, it is a little confusing. So to unconfuse my brain, we're gonna go back to the source triad so that we're getting rid of all the voicing. And we're going to copy the source triads over because that will make it easier. So let's hit Shift. So we'll make sure we have all the triads. So let's hit Shift, drag this over here. I found that when you raise the third, starting with a simple triad usually makes it easier. Now to give you guys a little shortcut, what might help here is if we change the snap to grid to something big like a beat or half beat. And let's try actually the bar. And then we're going to hit Shift Q. So that will pull everything back to the beginning. Now it looks like it grabbed a lot of notes, so never mind. What we need to do though is just start over with this part. Okay, so this is a little tricky. So we're gonna raise the thirds. Taking all these middle notes, hit Control up. Now we should be able to, in theory, if I did this right, take all the root notes in the fifth and just drag them to the right. Okay, that's what happened last time. I dragged them right to the one step. It should have been two steps. Okay, so everything's offset by a step. Okay, I see what I did there. So I have to manually go through and just line this up. All right, so that's what happened last time. So this is going to feel more natural, but it feels more gappy. And then we can add in these little notes in between. So now we have a more natural sound. Now it still doesn't have that weight to the sound because we're so high up. Let's try dropping this down an octave to see if it gives us a little more of a natural weight without us having to add a bass note in. So now we have this full composition, guys. Look at all these notes. It looks complicated, but it just started with those three simple notes and understanding chord voicing and timing. We created this entire thing. So let's run it from the very beginning here, and then we'll move into more synthetic melodies. Now, I'm going to explain this four component system, but technically, just to give you guys an overview, we have a contrast layer because we're playing lower notes. We have the chords, in this case C sharp, and then we're playing it rhythmically, so we added rhythm. And because we added the perception of a top line, we basically created everything all in one. The top line, the harmony, the contrast, and the rhythm. So you can combine these four components into one instrument. All right, so now we can move to the next style of melody, which is a more synthetic approach. Serum 2 is considered the industry standard. What we're going to use some FL Studio stuff just to keep it FL Studio related here. Let's go to Toxic and Biohazard. Let's go to the presets. Let's go to default, and we're going to use the top left quadrant here to modulate the sound by itself. We'll create like a buzzy sine wave, and we're going to turn on operator 2 and turn on the mix level for operator 2. You can pan one left, one to the right to create a wider sound. And then turn these to about 20. That's like the sweet spot for this synth. And now it sounds like a buzzy saw. So the reason this is good is because we can turn it into a Reese bass, we could turn it into an arpeggio, we could turn it into chords. It has a very wide use without getting too buzzy like a saw, but we can always turn it into a saw. So here's what we're going to do for the synthetic approach. We're going to start with the chords, and I'll show you guys faster ways to create different layers. So first we need to decide what kind of chords we're going for. So let's go to the tempo. We're just going to keep this at 140. We're going to right click, go to piano roll. And now let's use those chord codes, but let's use what are called chord extensions. So chord extensions are taking a simple chord like a C sharp and adding notes to it. to make it sound more lush. Okay, so if you want more lush music, try chord extensions here. So we cover this at busyworksbeats.com/premium in our music theory essentials. If you guys want to understand chord extensions and lusher chords, I'll just show you guys the notes for now. So let's start off with the minor triad, and let me show you guys actually what the chord code is real quick. So again, the chord codes app is at busyworksbeats.com. So again, your root note is 0. Okay, then we're going to count up our keyboard note by note until we finish out the chord code. So 0, 3, 7 creates the minor chord 0. Count up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Play those notes together, you get the minor chord. So 0, 3, 7, 10 is how you create what's called the minor 7th extension. So 0, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10. Add that in. So when I say 10 and 7 and 3, I'm not talking about chord. I'm not talking about scale degrees. Okay, so very different system here. So that's how you create the chord. Now, if you guys want a more deeper understanding about how to create the chord, all you need to understand is the difference between a minor and a major chord. A minor chord is 3 semitones away. So let me show you guys the math behind this and how to make chord extensions even faster. We're going to take the root note, which is 0, copy it, pull it up 3 notes, 1, 2, 3. Now, all we have to do is take the root note and the third, okay, and pull these both up 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We just now created what's called the minor 7th extension. Now, if you want to take the 5th and count up 7 more notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you now have what's called a minor 9th chord. So as long as you know the number 7 and the chord you want to create, you can literally create pretty much anything. Everything comes down to that. Now, this chord is very buzzy, so let's pull back some of the modulation here. And certain sounds just have a better octave that they sound better in. So if I hit Control down, this just sounds better in this octave. It's just not right or wrong. It's just something. It just sounds better. I found that 9th chords tend to sound better in lower octaves. They just sound more smooth. If I went up here, it just sounds a little thin and weird. Okay, so we're going to use a 7th chord in this case, a minor 7th, 0, 3, 7, 10. But again, the way we get that is adding the root note, figuring out we want a minor chord. So we're going to count up 3 notes, and then we're going to take these 2 and count up 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's how you get the chord extension. Very simple. Now we have this chord structure. We're just going to determine what does our ear actually want to hear. Okay, so my ear wants to hear that D sharp. So this, in this case, is a minor 9th chord. Is 0, 3, 7, 10, 14, technically. Okay, so we're going to turn the metronome on. And then I'm going to hit Shift and pull it up. So I'm just listening to this note. And we're going to do what's called syncopation. So syncopation is when we add chords not on the downbeat. So instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. It's on the in-between spaces. So I'm going to move this chord to a more in-between space. And I think we could syncopate it even more. Let's change our snap to grid to 1/4 beat so we have more control over that fine-tuned timing. So this sounds wrong. So what we're going to do is take let me see here which way. So we want to keep the top note the same, so we don't want to move that note around. So we're going to take the 3rd and the 7th and hit Shift up to make this a major 9th chord. And then my ear wants to hear. Duh. Okay, so we're going to duplicate the same chord type and pull it over to C sharp now. Now I'm going to show you guys a different technique. We're going to make sure the top note is the same here. Actually, what we're going to do is take this chord that we had before, and we're just going to make sure the top note is the same. So we're going to pull F sharp down or get rid of it completely. Just so it feels a little more clustered, it's called. So now we get that Sonic the Hedgehog type of sound. So here is where we can use these 4 components to organize what we're doing. So what we've created so far is the harmony, the chord. Okay, so the chords add the glue to the track or the composition. Top line is usually an octave higher. It's not a rule, it's just usually an octave higher so that our ear can separate the notes from the chord, from the melody. And it's a repetitive melody that we can memorize. So what we're going to do is take this, we're going to copy and paste it into a new pattern. I'm going to clone Toxic Biohazard, hit right click, hit C, hit Control X, Control V to copy and paste. Now I learned this from 9ungyal, this specific approach on YouTube. We used to do it back in the day, but on a different variable. But hit Alt A That will add the arpeggiator. And then this is what it sounds like. But then we're going to hit Alt R. So this is the specific technique I forgot we used to do. Turn off pattern mode and go to the panning and turn on bipolar mode so it goes left and right. And then have the pan option turned up. And this will randomize the panning. And then we can hit Control up so that it's up an octave. And now we have a top line built out of the chords. Now what we're going to do is create 2 sections for the top line. We're going to hit Control G to group this one and then highlight this, hit Control G. We're going to double click on this second one, hit Control up. So now we have 2 octaves of the top line playing the same thing. So it feels like it's moving over time. To get the bass line, it's very simple. We're going to go back to the chords. We're going to use the same exact sound. We're going to right click, hit C to clone. We're going to take the chords, hit Control C, right click, find an empty pattern, and then paste the chords into the bass. So I'm going to label these so I know which is which. Here's the bass, here's the chords, and here's the arpeggiator, top line. All right, so now we have the bass. Let's go to pattern mode. All we have to do now is just remove all the notes except for the bottom note. So that's how we get the bass line, just like that. So everything derives from the chords, basically, is what my lesson here. So I'll show you guys a couple things we could do to make the bass feel more bass-esque. We're going to overlap these notes just a little bit so they slur into one another. And then we're going to go back to Toxic Biohazard, turn the polyphony down to mono, which means it can only play one note at a time. We're going to go to the settings, go to the wrench tool, turn on monophonic mode and slide mode so that it blurs the notes. It slurs the notes. And we can also try going down an octave. So let's pull this down -12. I might need a little more modulation. Also, sometimes the transpose, it's hard to tell because it's such a low octave, but sometimes that transpose doesn't, I lost my mouse, hold on guys. So instead of doing the in plugin transposition, because sometimes FL Studio plugins don't transpose correctly, we're gonna hit Control down in the piano roll itself to pull the octave down, and let's add the bass to the contrast layer. And we have a lot of density because the chords are lower. Let's try pulling our bass down one more octave. It might be too low. It's more of in the sub category. Let's add more saturation to it, more modulation. So now we have that buzzy low end of the bass. Now we have 3 of the 4 components. Actually, we have 4 because the arpeggio creates rhythm and it's the highest frequency. Again, top line doesn't always mean the highest frequency. It just means we're separating the sound from the chords. So there we have the top line playing rhythm and top line. We have the harmony playing the chords. We have the bass in the contrast layer, adding the density. So we have all 4 of these components and that's why it feels complete. Let's pull back some of the bitiness of the bass. Now let's just do some sound design on the chords. Let's add unison and widen out the sound a little bit. Let's add unison on the arpeggio. Let's turn it down. So let's hear our melody so far. Alright, so now we can understand where these come from. Let's do one thing here, and this is for more advanced users. I don't recommend beginners do this at all because it creates a lot more confusion. But we're going to highlight all the melodic things, the bass, the top line, the arpeggio, the chords. Let's hit Control G and combine it into one pattern. The reason we're doing this is for underground music specifically. They like to transpose the key. So we're going to go to the left side on the panel picker and right click and transpose. I like to go up 3 for a happier sound. -3 goes down 3 semitones to a darker introspective sound. So let's go +3. And what it does is it transposes all our MIDI up 3 semitones. It's going to sound happier. Let's add some modulation here. Now from here, if you guys want to get more exotic, for example, we can highlight these in the channel rack. We can highlight these sounds here for the more synthetic approach, hit Control L. And then what we can do is group everything, or we can group individual things. In this case, we're just going to group everything and call it melody. And we can hit Control in the mixer, highlight these, and then right click and route to this track only. Now most people add what's called gross beat. So gross beat has a million things you could do in here, so there's a lot to cover. Let's just go to Juggling Science and try different presets here called Tripeat or Trifecta. So now we're getting a whole different vibe. Now let me show you guys even more complexity. We can double click here and go into the arpeggiator. Now this is really complex, so we're going to copy the notes hitting Shift and pull them over 2 steps in this case and hit Control up to add more movement. Actually, that sounds not good. Never mind, it doesn't sound good on this sound, but you guys can try that on different sounds. Because we have so many chord changes, it's overlapping the chords, that's why it doesn't sound good. So we're going to leave it as is. But another way to add texture is to go to your top line, for example, add a plugin called Transporter. This adds what's called a granular layer, and then you can reverse that layer. You could pitch shift it up or down an octave. My settings I keep are tempo, trigger on 1 quintuplet, turn sensitivity up, and I mess with the spread knob. Now sometimes it gets a little busy on the sound, so we could pull down loop A and B. So see how it's overlapping? So the timing isn't right for this track. It's just too many chord switches. But you guys can try that. So gross beat is making it sound off because it doesn't continue. Like if I turn gross beat off and then we have this effect, it'll make more sense. And then we can turn down loop A and B. But because we're running through gross beat, it stutters and it repeats the chords in a certain way, so it sounds wrong when you run it through that. Now, I guess technically we can add Transporter to the entirety. Let's see if that sounds decent. It may or may not. I've never tried this before, so let's add it to the group. It's a little too much movement for this track. Yeah, this is way too much movement, but try Transporter on your slower melodies. It adds a nice granular, faster layer. So now we can go back to the sound itself and sound design to make the sound fit this vibe. So I'm just gonna push the chords a little bit harder, make them a little more detuned. So again, sorry guys, at that point it's sound design preference. So you guys get the gist. All right, so that's how we combine that. So far we covered acoustic stuff, we covered synthetic stuff. Now let's cover, like, I'll say a hybrid of acoustic and synthetic, which is more in the hip hop lane. So it all still comes down to those four components: the top line, the harmony section, the contrast layer, and the rhythm section. So now we're going to use some free contact libraries. And again, you guys will get the project files. So if I'm moving too fast, you guys will get the project files. Let's go to busyworksbeats.com/melody to get these project files. Let's hit Control L. Let's go to a new pattern here, and I'm going to mute these just so we don't hear them as we produce. And we're going to turn the metronome back on. Let's go to contact. Let's go to these libraries. So one of the best ones, I think, I've made a whole video about this. There's a lot of free stuff out there. I made a 40-minute video about the best free plugins on my channel, so you guys should check it out. So here we're going to do more, I guess, like neo soul type R&B, or I mean hip hop R&B. So we're going to use this library called Blueprint by Fracture Sounds. They make really good sounds here for free. Now we're at 140 BPM, so let's see what we can do here. So we're going to spread the chords out pretty far. Now this is where we get a little more complex, because now we're using what are called chord extensions. Now this chord sounds complex, but I showed you guys the simple triad is 0-3-7. And all you have to know is to create chord extensions, you take either the third, the tonic, or the fifth and count up 7. So in this case, if I wanted to make this a minor 7th chord, I take the third, count up 7 notes, and add that note in. Now we have a 7th chord, a minor 7th. If I want to make this a 9th chord, I take the perfect 5th and I add up 7 notes. So making chord extensions is a lot easier than you may think. And then we're doing what's called the raised third. We're taking this E, pulling it up an octave. That's a Jeff Schneider technique. He's a great YouTuber who teaches jazz theory and deeper music theory. So what we're going to do is lean more into the musical, colorful hip hop and not just the boom bap half step hip hop. So let's do that. So I'll cover some of those in between chords. It is advanced, but the technique here, guys, is the same thing. We're picking a chord and we're picking the notes. So it has a timing to it. Okay, then we're going to repeat. So it's a little slow for my hands here, so we're just going to end it at the 16 bar mark. And to fix some of the timing here, we can change our snap to grid to a quarter beat and hit Shift Q. I learned that from Infinite. In this case, I'll just leave it as is. It's not that big of a time difference. Now again, these chords look really complex. It looks like we're doing some alien science. Guys, all we did was we played C sharp. Then we counted up 3, 1, 2, 3. So there's E, counted up. So 0-3-7 creates that minor chord. 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom, there's a minor chord. Again, how do we get to the 7th extension? You take the third, you count up 7 notes. So as long as you know the number 7, you guys are straight. That's how we got there. Now, how do we get to the 9th chord? You take the 5th, which is 7 notes from the root note, and you count up 7 more notes. That's all I did, guys. That's why it sounds exotic. And then you could take the third, which is this note here, and just play it backwards. And it sounds melodic that way. So we're using the same technique we did with the acoustic guitar on piano. Now this chord is a little more advanced. This is called a dominant altered chord that I teach in Music Theory Essentials. So I'm not gonna act like this is a beginner step here. But it's a way to add tension to your chord progression. But the question is, okay, where are we headed? We're headed from the root note to the perfect 5th. That's where I'm getting the chords from. So I'm going from C sharp and I'm playing the same exact chord at G sharp because that's its perfect 5th, and they tend to play the same chord type at the root level. So it's C sharp, minor, and then count up 7 notes, that top note, and play the same chord All I'm doing is just adding a chord extension to that chord to give it a nice sound. Okay, so we're playing so it fundamentally comes back down to the basics. Now for the bass line, what we're going to do is take all the root notes and we're going to play another free instrument here called Precision Free in Contact. It's a Contact player, which is free. And the library is by Impact Soundworks called Precision. So it's called Shreddage 3 Precision Free. And this is the bass. And all we're going to do is shape the tone here because it's a little slappy sounding. Pull back the tone so it's a little more filtered. And what we're going to do is simply play the root notes in the bass. So what do we have so far? Let me move this stuff to the right. What we have so far is we have the harmony section. Okay, so let's drag that into the harmony section. So the next step is we're adding the contrast section. So everything falls into these 4 categories when it comes to arrangement. So all I'm doing here, guys, is playing the root note of the chords using the bass down an octave. So now we have the composition layer called the contrast layer. Now, if we want to add variation to it, we can add what's called chromaticism to the bass. So we can do what's called a walking bass. So instead of just boom, boom, we could do just adding that little half step in between. Very common in bass. So I'm going to do another take here, but this time we're going to add those little chromatic movements, meaning note by note movements. And this is more of a jazzier approach. All right, so now we have variation in the bass, and that's what makes the song feel more dynamic, is not playing the same thing over and over and over again. All right, now we have all those. Now we can add an electric guitar just as the top line. We can use Contact Player. We can use a lot of things here, but I'll just show you guys a free library. Now this one's called Shreddage 3 Stratus Free, again from Impact Soundworks. It's very good. What we're going to do is play the chords, but just we're going to pick the chords and play a top line. Now we can play like something that creates a motif, a repetitive pattern in the rule of 3, but I'm not going to force it. So this specific guitar only goes to so many. This is the highest note here. On a real guitar, you can go higher than that. So we're kind of limited in terms of the range, but that's fine for this technique because we don't need to be crazy with it. Again, we're just going to play the chords. Spread out. Okay, so we can play literally the same thing as the top line, but instead of doing that, let's just come up with that motif. And again, it's just raising that third. That's what makes it sound melodic. Okay, so I'm just gonna repeat those 1, 2, 3s over and over. But again, it's taking just a portion of this chord because we already did this here. That's what I'm doing just with the guitar. And we're just gonna play 3 notes at a time to emphasize that rule of thirds. So we can repeat the same pattern and maybe switch something up so it's not the same thing over and over again. And just turn this instrument down as loud. Let me fix this. So FL didn't record the first note. I don't think that triggered there anyway. It's very bitey guitars. Let's see if we can pull back some of the bite. We're just shaving some of the tone off, so it's a little bit smoother of a sound. Now we just have to ask, what does our ear want to hear change in this chord, or top line, I should say. So what I'm going to do on a different channel here, we're going to clone the guitar so that it doesn't mess with the first guitar in terms of the pitch information. Let's go to a new pattern. Now, again, this guitar only goes but so high in frequency, but I want to add some kind of pitch bending, some kind of like riff at the end. So I'm just going to add that somewhere in here. Let's go to a new pattern. It's hard to hear without the metronomes. Turn the metronome back on. So we're just adding those little pitch bends to make it more unique. Now, this is technically what I call a top line expression. So anytime you guys want to make your components sound a little more just arranged with more stuff, think about the same 4 components, just expression layer. So expression layer is like when I speak like this. It's very exaggerated. So the same thing with music, you can add exaggerated areas. For a rhythm expression, you might do a drum fill. For a contrast expression, you might do a bass slide. For a harmony expression, you might do pitch bends. Start stuff like that. Same thing for the top line. You may add more pitch bends or more exaggerated movement. So I'm going to add a little plugin here to widen out that guitar just so it's not centered in with the chords here, so our ear can separate the chords from that top line. Just adding Fruity Stereo delay. And now I'm going to go back and add little chord movements. Now this will be considered a chord expression. Just stuff like that, little endings. So now all those little chord movements, I consider that a harmony expression because it's not going to hold the track together, but it is still a harmony element. It's more of an accent. So let's add a little movement to these keys. We're going to add a plugin. This is not a free plugin. I guess we could use a free plugin. Let's try Fruity Panomatic. Only thing is it's not my favorite, but we'll pull it up just because we want to keep it here. And then we're going to do panning. Actually, no, we're going to set the LFO to the pan control and turn the amount up. And then you have to do the speed manually. It's the only thing I don't like about the plugin. But now the keys rotate. So now we're adding more movement. So I'm adding more time delay to this harmony expression layer. All right, so now we have the chord fixed. At first I had a diminished chord, but then I went back and changed the chord type. So let's hear all these melodies together. So now here's one composition. Now let's bring in the other compositions. So as you guys can see, everything is pretty much centered around the harmony. If you guys want to learn more, just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. So you guys can get started for free. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. You can start your 14-day free trial. We're importing all our courses in, so we pretty much have all of our courses ported over from our old platform. So if you're still on our Thinkific, you can log in here to gain access to the newer platform. All right, guys, just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium. Subscribe if you're new. Share with a friend. Peace out, guys.